Welcome to the channel, Cheating Secrets. My name is Jerry Smith. I'm an ordinary guy. I'm 175 centimeters tall and weigh 70 kilograms. I have chestnut hair and brown eyes. I got average grades in both high school and college. I'm in good shape for my age. I'm 42. I work as a mid-level manager for a clothing retail chain. I grew up in a tough neighborhood, and my size used to cause me some problems there. If you back down, you'd get beaten to a pulp. So I never gave in to anyone. Sometimes I got my ass kicked, but most of the time, I was the one doing the beating. After a while, trouble stopped finding me as often as it used to. Still, I kept training at the boxing gym until I stopped about 10 years ago. Some of us practiced mixed martial arts too. It was much tougher. And it was my only hobby. I'm married to Joanne. She's 42 years old, a brunette, 167 centimeters tall, with a slender figure and a very beautiful face. We met during our first year at university. She was studying law, but we had 2 classes together. At first, we just talked, then we started dating. Joanne was quite popular in school. Every guy in the fraternity wanted to be with her. But she kept her distance from them, at least as far as I could tell. We became a steady couple and grew closer in our second year. It was her first time, and for me, it was almost the same. We stayed together through graduation. She got into the state law school, and I started working at a local bank. We got married that summer after college and got along really well. Our sex life was good, varied and intense in different ways. Joanne read about different positions and bedroom games, and we tried some of what she learned. We had all kinds of role-playing games. Sometimes I was her professor. Sometimes she played a cheerleader or a high-class seductress. Other times, I was a burglar or her hairdresser. We had naked nights, where we had to stay undressed no matter what. Joanne was more dominant in bed than I was. We experimented with different positions and various scents. It took Joanne 3 years to finish law school. During that time, I supported us with my job at the bank. Joanne was extremely smart and graduated at the top of her class. She then received a job offer from a major firm in Washington, D.C., and she was very excited to take it. I started looking for work in the area and found a position as a branch manager at a bank. We moved to Washington and rented an apartment in the city, close to her office. I had to commute to the suburbs, but I could do it by bike or metro. We didn't own a car. That first year in Washington was tough. Joanne was working 65 to 70 hours a week, maybe more. I worked fewer hours, but I cooked dinner, did the laundry, and kept the house clean. She earned about the same as I did, and it looked like her salary would be going up each year. We were in good financial shape, but our personal life suffered. We were intimate maybe twice a month, and even when we were, it wasn't as good as it used to be. Over time, Joanne started coming home later and later from work. Dinner would be cold, even if I delayed it. I began to think more about our relationship, especially about her. I tried to imagine what her work life was really like. She didn't talk much about it at home. She was working with a team of lawyers and paralegals on a corporate merger deal. As the merger deadline approached, she was home even less. One Friday, I decided to surprise her during her lunch break. I knew she didn't like eating alone, so I planned to take her to a nearby place for a bite. I arrived at noon, but her secretary told me Joanne had taken the whole day off. Where did she go? To court? No, I'm not exactly sure where, but I believe her group went out for lunch, probably to Cicero's. The secretary had an odd look on her face when she said that. Well, it's just lunch. Why the whole day off? Maybe I'll see her home early tonight. The secretary lowered her eyes. Maybe. I could tell she was very uncomfortable, so I said goodbye, thanks. See you later. Once outside, I walked toward the metro station across from Cicero's restaurant. I bought a tuna and cheese sandwich and sat outside, watching the street. About an hour later, Joanne came out of the restaurant with a group of people. There was another woman, Lydia, whom I recognized from community events. With them were 3 men. 2 of them were in their 30s, both large guys. The third was older, graying, and not as big. I assumed he was Paul Dorgan, Joanne's department head at the firm and a partner. I didn't recognize the other 2. Joanne was walking between the 2 younger men. One had dark hair, and the other had light chestnut hair and a beard. I might have seen them at a social event before, but I wasn't sure. I crossed the street to cut them off. The dark-haired guy had his arm around my wife's waist. She didn't pull away. I hurried up behind them and tapped Joanne on the shoulder. She turned to see who it was and, paling, said, "Oh. Jerry. What are you doing here?" The guy still had his arm around her, even though she was now facing me. He looked annoyed. Joanne stepped away from him. "Fred, this is my husband, Jerry. Maybe you met him at the picnic." Joanne blushed. The other 3 looked tense as well. Paul Dorgan stepped forward and extended his hand. "Jerry, I'm Paul. I do remember you from the picnic, you were playing softball." I shook his hand, keeping my eyes on Fred. He was over 6 feet tall and solidly built. I did play softball. And yes, it was at the picnic. But I usually play hardball. I was still staring at Fred, and he was staring right back at me. "Fred, maybe we should just settle this right now," I said. He didn't answer immediately, and Paul didn't give him the chance. "Jerry, calm down. We were just out for lunch. The merger deal is finally done, and we were having a small celebration. We're heading back now." I think maybe Fred got a little carried away. Joanne had collected herself enough to speak. "Jerry, I hope you're not about to do something you'll regret. Fred probably just overdid it with the celebrating." I kept my eyes locked on Fred, and he didn't look away either. I smiled. His fists were clenched. He was coiled up, ready to fight. I waited for him. I was completely relaxed. Confrontation, physical confrontation, was one of the things I enjoyed most in life. And it could happen any second now. Fred's bearded friend grabbed him from behind and pulled him aside. Fred tried to resist, but Paul snapped at him. "Stop it right now. Take him, Bill." Fred backed down and let Bill lead him away. By that time, a small crowd had already gathered. Joanne stepped between me and her colleagues. "Jerry, there's nothing to worry about or get upset over. Nothing happened." Paul spoke up. "Joanne, maybe you should take the rest of the day off. Go home with your husband. There's not much left to do today anyway, and tomorrow's a new day." "All right, thanks, Paul. Come on, Jerry, let's go for a walk." I said, "I'm really disappointed. I'll need to hit the gym later." But I left with her. We headed toward our apartment. It was in the opposite direction from her office, but it was the same direction they had all been walking when they came out of the restaurant. The other 4 turned around and went back toward Cicero's and their office. Quite a statement, in my view. Joanne and I walked around the city for about 30 minutes. We hardly spoke. When we got back home and went inside, I brought us some water. I sat down on the couch, and she sat across from me on a dining chair. It was a small apartment. I said, "So, tell me what happened." "Everything about it. There's really nothing to tell. You jumped to conclusions. He just had one arm around me." There are a few problems with that answer, and I'm sure you know it. You're lying and underestimating me. I'm not an idiot, even if I'm not a lawyer. Don't lie to me anymore. Her face tightened. She didn't say anything, but her breathing became more rapid. "Just calm down and tell me what's going on. I know you took the rest of the day off from work. I know you were all leaving when I saw you. And, more importantly, Fred looked like he was ready to fight me. He was about to try and hit me, right there on the street. If Bill hadn't grabbed him, we would have fought right there. So I think he has some feelings for you, feelings that make him hostile toward your husband. She started crying, quietly, without sobbing. We all worked so hard. We all grew close. Fred and I worked especially well together. He wanted to celebrate the deal, just the two of us. Anne. I agreed. Would you have brought him here? No. He said he had a room at the Hyatt. Where were the others going? The three of them were also headed to the Hyatt. They had a different room. Is Fred married? Yes. He has a 2-year-old son. She began crying again. Have you had any kind of sex with him so far? If you lie to me, and I find out, and I will find out, I'll leave you. No sex. A few kisses, some hugging. No undressing. And what about the other three? Is this some kind of regular thing for them? I think Bill and Lydia may have secretly met a few times. Paul just wanted to watch. Bill and Lydia, are they both married, to other people? Yes. Paul is too, but his wife is ill. Have you ever cheated on me before this? No. And this wasn't cheating, you stopped me. There's not much of a difference. You destroyed all my trust in you. I think if I had actually slept with him, that would have been a big difference from what happened today. But I can see how trust could be a problem. I don't know what to say. I'll never allow myself to be in that kind of situation again. You say that now. But what happens when you're back at work on Monday? They'll all want to know what we talked about. And that guy Fred, he's not going to back off. Kid or no kid, I saw how strongly he feels about you. So what are you going to do about it? Maybe you should quit that job. I can't just quit. We need the money. And I like this job. I'm really good at it, and I'll keep getting promotions. I understand. But how can I know if you're staying on the straight path? Because I need some reassurance. Let me think. I thought about it. Leverage was necessary, and I needed to create it. Here's what we'll do. You're going to write a confession. It'll include everything you told me, down to the last detail. Then you'll sign it and give it to me. For what? Oh. I see. It'll be a threat, to all of them. Exactly. I'll make copies for each of them. And I'll add a little note. I want you to swear that what's in the confession is true, under penalty of perjury. And that's what we did. She wrote out everything that had happened, in full detail, even her suspicions about what was going on between the others. Then we went to have dinner at a cafe down the street. She relaxed a lot after we shared a bottle of red wine. We returned home afterward and went straight upstairs. We undressed quickly, and she dropped to her knees. This is called, I'm sorry, she said, caressing me. Later, we had hard, intense sex that went on for a long time. Finally, exhausted, we fell asleep. In the morning, we had rough sex again. Then I made copies of the confession. I sealed them in 4 envelopes marked private and confidential, and added a note. In it, I made it very clear, if I ever found out about any further sexual misconduct involving my wife, in any form, I would mail the confession to each of their spouses. The only exception would be for the person who told me about it. In that case, their spouse wouldn't receive anything. I figured it would create some tension within the team. But would that make me feel any better? It was Saturday, and I went to the gym for a few sparring rounds and a heavy bag workout to release the remaining anger. Well, maybe there wasn't all that much left. The guys noticed. I had trouble finding a sparring partner. But the heavy bag did its job. Jane, one of the few women who trained at that gym, asked me what was going on. Just some life problems. I'll sort them out. She smiled. Despite her tough hobby, she was a cutie, with a great figure beneath that workout gear. Well, if you ever need help or anything else, just let me know. I will. I looked at her a little longer than usual, and she didn't look away. But then we both turned away. I think she was just intrigued watching me work the heavy bag. Still, I remembered her offer, just in case Joanne screwed something up. But she didn't. On the way home, I stopped by a trendy spy shop and bought a few gadgets. So now, I had 2 voice recorders. One was very small, shaped like a pen. In fact, it was a pen. It could record up to 12 hours of audio, supposedly voice-activated. I slipped it into Joanne's purse when I got home. There was a slight risk she might notice it, given the state of her handbag. I could upload data from the device remotely. The other voice recorder went in our main room. I hid it under the couch, near the bedroom door. I could turn it on and off with a remote control. I kept it running when I wasn't home and usually turned it off when I was. On Saturday night, we went to the movies, then got some ice cream. It was a nice date, and neither of us mentioned our problem. Sunday was relaxed, too. I watched a football game on TV while Joanne read a romance novel. Yes, a romance novel. Don't ask me anything about it. We had dinner at home and went to bed early. We had a gentle, pleasant session of sex. I was feeling much better, especially knowing both recorders were in place. On Monday morning, we headed off to work. I gave Joanne the envelopes so she could deliver them to her team. I knew she'd do it because I believed she still loved me, and I saw this move as a way to keep us together while allowing her to continue working at the firm. Besides, I had my recording devices. I lacked trust, so the devices were necessary. I rode my bike to work. It was a regular day, and I made fried chicken for dinner. Joanne walked in around 6 p.m. So, how did your team like my envelopes? I gathered everyone in the conference room, one of the ones that isn't bugged. They were all worried about Friday. I told them you figured it out right away. I told them you had asked me to quit, but I wanted to stay. Then you came up with this plan. I gave them the envelopes. They all got uncomfortable pretty quickly. It was interesting because it took them a moment to fully grasp what you'd done, everyone except Paul. He understood immediately. He actually smiled while reading. I think we should hire your husband, he said. That document is the work of a clever and cunning mind. In any case, she continued, eventually they all saw what he saw. I'll admit, haha, there were plenty of sideways glances at me. But then everyone just left and went back to work. I don't think the team will last much longer, maybe a day or so at best. If I were the manager, I'd split us up. Later, I reviewed the uploaded recording. The meeting went exactly as she had told me. However, I found that everything afterward was so dull it became useless. So much for high-tech solutions. Even though I had saved Joanne, I was on the verge of falling apart over our marriage. I couldn't watch her all the time, and I wasn't confident in her continued faithfulness. She'd had plenty of opportunities to cheat on me. Women like her often fall for the charm of seducers, whether it's strong pressure, subtle pressure, or soft emotional manipulation. Pressure is still pressure. Maybe she had learned her lesson. Maybe not. I decided we needed to have a deeper conversation. This was about 4 weeks after the incident. Her team had been split up, but they all stayed in the DC office, except for Lydia. And Lydia was the one I wasn't worried about at all. One evening after work, before dinner, I sat at the kitchen table with 2 glasses of wine. Joanne, we need to talk, I said. That clearly worried her. She sat down and looked at me. What? I thought things were going well. Really well. I can't seem to shake the trust issue, even with your confession. You know there are a few loopholes in that document. I'd like a better explanation of why you agreed to cheat on me with Fred. God. I liked him. I found him attractive. And I didn't think you'd ever find out, since it was supposed to be a one-time thing. That's the lesson I've learned. I love you, and I want to be with you, only you. But you knew it was risky. Everyone in your office knew what was going on. If you'd looked at it logically, you would have walked away from it. But you didn't. I think you had real passion for Fred. So strong that you were willing to risk our marriage, and he was willing to risk his. That makes me feel diminished, like you were completely swept up by him. I can't help how I felt. I told you I'd be honest. Either way, I'll never know what it would have been like. Was he big? I hit her with that. She looked away, clearly embarrassed. I pressed, how big, and how do you know? Our embraces were pretty tight. It only happened a few times, but it was when we were dancing, pressed closely together. A woman can sense a lot from that. He was, well, he seemed big. But that's not why I agreed. Maybe partly. But mostly, I just felt close to him, and I liked him. It felt like a reward for successfully finishing the deal. It took tight teamwork to pull it off. It wouldn't have worked if we didn't get along well. And that job required constant, very close collaboration. I spent more time with him than with you for several months. So, in a way, he took my place. And you knew he was bigger than me. I don't see this as a one-time lapse. Maybe you did, if you even thought it through at all. No. He never took your place at all. She sniffled again, then lunged at me in frustration. Relax. I just needed to have this conversation. I hope you reflect on what you said, and use it to make sure this never happens again. Because if it does, it'll be the end of us. There won't be a next time. You know this was entirely tied to your work. The pressure of the project brought people together. One thing led to another. And, you'll have the same dynamic on the next project. I just hope you'll see it coming and stop it before we reach disaster. I'll keep all of that in mind. Don't worry. She looked at me. Let's go upstairs, she said. We can eat later. We went upstairs. And we did eat, much later, reheating the leftovers. The following week, I took the opportunity to install an app on her phone, hidden in the system code. I could track her messages and the numbers she called. From time to time, I also listened to the voice recorder. For 3 months, nothing. Then one evening after dinner, I brought up a conversation. I think we should try to start a family. Now feels like the right time. Oh, Jerry. I'm not sure. What about my career? You want children. Better now than later, when you'll have even more on your mind. You can work during the pregnancy, and after that, you'll just need to take a short leave. I can help. My job isn't as demanding as yours. I've been doing a bit of day trading, and it's been going well. We have enough money to start looking for a house. What do you say? All right. If we find a house we both like, I'm in. We did find a house, on the other side of the river, but still nearby. It had 3 bedrooms, a nice kitchen, a patio, and it was located in a solid neighborhood. I bought it. I paid for it outright, and it was registered in my name. Joanne didn't like that, but I insisted. I told her it was money I had earned, and the house was my gift to her and our future family. In any case, if we ever got divorced, the house would be treated the same as if it were jointly owned. She agreed. We moved in, and she stopped taking birth control. 3 months later, she got pregnant. We had a son, Jacob. Joanne returned to work after 2 months. During the day, a kind woman came to help us out until I was able to restructure my bank job into mostly independent contract work from home. I started arranging deals with other banks, reviewing contracts, and handling odd jobs that no one else wanted to deal with. I also continued day trading, and got even better at it. When Jacob turned 3, Joanne got pregnant again and worked hard right up until she gave birth. Twins. Of course, we already knew in advance that it would be a girl and a boy, Jennifer and Todd. This time, my mother came to help with the children. She and my father had moved to Arlington. Joanne returned to work just 3 weeks after giving birth. Jacob was fascinated by his little brother and sister, just like I was. I loved being a father. I left the bank and began working independently as a consultant in banking mergers. Most of my work was done from home, using my computer and phone. My mother gradually started spending less time with the kids, saying she needed to spend more time with my dad. They had both retired and gone traveling. Joanne became a partner at her firm when Paul retired. The kids are now 10 and 7. We're both 36 and look respectable. Well, more or less. Joanne was never particularly close with her parents, they lived far away. We saw them during the holidays, maybe for a week in the summer on vacation. When her father fell ill, she went to visit him, but his condition worsened, and he passed away soon after. Joanne has 2 sisters who live near their mother. So after the funeral, Joanne returned to work immediately. I started to worry about how much Joanne was working. I began to wonder again if she was drifting away from me, or maybe even falling for someone else. Our sex life was fine, considering the presence of the kids. But now that they were old enough, we had more time to ourselves. Still, the intensity of our sex life hadn't increased. Joanne also wasn't the most hands-on mother. She definitely loved the kids. She played games with them, wrestled on the floor with the twins, and made them do their homework, when she was home. They loved her too. But day-to-day parenting? That was mostly me. I took them to school and picked them up. I went to their soccer games and coached them. My work was taking up less and less of my time. Still, I spent several hours a week at the gym. I sparred and worked the heavy bags. Sometimes I came home with bruises or cuts. It had become routine. Joanne organized a celebration party in honor of becoming a partner. There was a dinner and dance held at the Hyatt Hotel. The firm was large, and over 100 people attended. The event wasn't just for her, 2 of her colleagues had also been made partners. Fred was already a partner. A year ago, we had even been to his house for dinner. He had brought his wife, who was very attractive. They now had 3 children too. We had a pleasant evening at the celebration. Fred and I exchanged polite conversation when I shook his hand. After all this time, there were no macho games between us. Fred and his wife were also at the partnership party. When the dancing began, I danced with Joanne for a while, and then we sat down again. A younger man came over and asked Joanne to dance. Joanne said, "Jerry, this is William Pullen. He works at our firm." She let him take her by the hand, and they went down to the dance floor. While they were dancing, Fred sat down next to me. At that moment, we were the only 2 at the table. "If I were you, Jerry, I'd keep a close eye on Mr. Pullen," Fred said quietly. Just a few words. "I remember our little issue, and I wouldn't want to be accused of not warning you, even after all this time." I watched them dance. "Are they close at work?" "Close. They work together every day." "I'm sure she's mentioned him." "No. Not that I can remember." Fred said, "I remember what it felt like when she and I grew close. The dynamic might be similar to this. That's all I'm going to say. I don't think anything serious has happened, yet. Thanks for the heads up. I'd never do anything to damage your relationship or your family, except, that one time. It won't happen again." Fred stood up and walked away. Pullen and Joanne stayed on the dance floor for one more song. It was a slow one. I watched very carefully. Pullen was over 6 feet tall, with a swimmer's build. He moved well. He had sandy blonde hair and blue eyes. The two of them didn't look like they were up to anything inappropriate. They just looked like a couple dancing. Maybe that's how Joanne and I looked too. I was a little uneasy. I considered asking her about it. And if they kept dancing, I thought I might step in. But after the slow dance, he escorted Joanne back to our table. She asked him to sit, and he did. Joanne said, "Jerry, William and I have been working together on the Monroe case for a while. I thought I should introduce you too." "Hi," he said. "Hi. How long have you been with the firm?" "About a year. I moved down from New York to work with Congress, but the Monroe case has taken up most of my time." "Is that wrapping up soon, or?" Joanne said, "We're hoping it's nearing the end, but nothing's set in stone. It's a regulatory matter. We're presenting it to the FCC next month." "Oh," I said. I felt like yawning, but I didn't. "Where are you staying, William?" "I've got an apartment in Northeast Shaw. I thought I'd be spending more time on the hill. Maybe that'll come later. I can still bike to work, though. I used to do that. But now I mostly work from home." Joanne said, "Jerry runs his own consulting business for banks. He can do it from our home and make sure everything's fine with the kids. It works well for us." "Yeah, sounds ideal," Pullen smiled. I didn't like his smile. But I didn't react. "All right," he said, "I should get going. Need to head home a little early." "Someone waiting on you?" "Yeah." He left, giving us a small wave. I watched Joanne watch him. Then she turned back and saw me watching her, watching closely. "He's a good guy, Jerry." She sounded slightly defensive to me. "I'll take your word for it. Though I haven't heard anything about him." "Why is that?" "I don't know. I thought I'd mentioned him. We've been working together for a while. I guess we just haven't talked much about my work lately." "Yeah, I suppose that's true. Let's dance a bit more before we head out." The rest of the night went well. We danced and had a good time. When we got home, we had fun in bed, better than it had been in quite a while. I thought about role-playing, pretending I was Pullen. But I didn't go through with it. The next day, Saturday, I took out my voice recorder and slipped it into Joanne's purse. I just didn't feel completely comfortable around her. I didn't want her to stray, especially with the kids and everything else. The recorder and the phone tracking app, new, for her new phone, were just meant to give me peace of mind. But that's not how things turned out at all. When Joanne came home from work that Monday, I made time to sit down with my laptop and upload the recording. Later, when she went to bed early, I listened to it through headphones. I didn't like what I heard. Early that morning, there had been a conversation between Joanne and Pullen. "Hi, Will. Come in." The sound of a chair sliding on the carpet. "I really enjoyed our dance Friday night." "Thank you. I hope Jerry wasn't annoyed." "I admit I was surprised when you asked me to dance, with him right there." "I told you. I mean, well, I saw Fred talking to Jerry while we were dancing." "So what? What does that have to do with us?" "Anyway, he didn't seem hostile at all. And we didn't do anything wrong, nothing even remotely suspicious. A long time ago, Fred and I were close. He and Jerry nearly came to blows right there on the street. And nothing happened. Well, maybe it was meant to, but it didn't. And so far," he said, "nothing has happened between us. Yet. Jerry's going to be on high alert, I'm telling you. Whatever we might want, I'm not going to risk my family. He would leave me. And he might just beat you up. He almost did it to Fred. He can't beat either of us. And why would he leave you? You're the one bringing in the money for the family." Ha! Somehow, he's making a ton of money trading stocks. I don't even know how much. But he bought our house outright about 12 years ago. And besides, don't be tempted to get into a fight with him. Consider yourself warned. Why would he ever need to find out anything? We could be careful. I know you want this. No chance, Buster, no matter what I might want. Time to get to work. I was more than a little irritated by what I'd heard. I could see that if they were given even half a chance, they'd be going at it like rabbits. I saw the same pattern unfolding as with Fred, just like Fred had warned me. I had to consider whether I even wanted to save Joanne this time, or not. I felt a growing sense of inevitability about divorce, driven by Joanne's unfaithfulness. Sooner or later, she would stray again, probably with someone from the firm, and likely someone well endowed. I thought about what a divorce would look like. I thought about the kids. I assumed I'd get custody, and she could see them on a set schedule. Finances weren't an issue. I had plenty of money. And she had a very well-paying job. I had also moved a decent amount into offshore accounts. Her law firm would probably find something, but not everything. In any case, even if she got rich after the divorce, I'd still be wealthy. And I still had my little gift for trading. All in all, I wasn't particularly afraid of divorce. If it came to that, I knew I had to do everything in my power to protect the kids from as much harm as possible. I didn't think Joanne would actually want to be the custodial parent. That made me wonder what her life would look like after a divorce. She didn't really have friends, not even close ones. Occasionally, she'd meet up with some women from work, but she was completely consumed by her job. I had guys at the gym, and some women there too. I was friendly with other parents and would sometimes grab a beer with my fellow coaches. I even went to ball games with two of them, and we got to know each other pretty well. But Joanne wasn't nearly as social. She didn't spend enough time at home to build those kinds of friendships. While I knew some of the guys in our neighborhood and their wives, Joanne really didn't know anyone. I figured she'd get plenty of sex if we divorced, but I didn't think she'd have much meaningful connection with anyone. Not the way we had it, even now. And that was what made me step in and try to stop whatever was forming between her and Pullen. I loved her, and I had loved her for a long time. I couldn't stand the thought of her being truly alone in the world. I made arrangements with my parents, who were in town, to take the kids from Friday through Sunday afternoon. By now, I had spent a lot of time listening to recordings and checking messages and call logs. I wanted to see how far things had progressed. There was a conversation between the two of them. Apparently, the case had suddenly moved close to resolution. Joanne said, "Will, I think we can wrap this up in about 2 weeks. We might have to go to New York to finalize everything. Maybe we could do it midweek and stay overnight." "You're a very bad man, Will. I don't think Jerry would like the idea of us spending the night away together. Just tell him it's necessary and that he should trust you. That's all. He's not an idiot. He'd find some way to check on what we're doing. He doesn't trust me. Don't tell him until the night after tomorrow. That way, he won't be able to interfere." Of course he could. He could just decide to come with me, offer to take me to a show or something. And I'd have to go along with it. "Listen, Joanne, when this case wraps up, I want to celebrate, with you, and only you. Just the two of us. You want that too, right?" "Yes. I'll come up with something. We could just get a room in the city, or you could come over to my place. During the workday." "I think that could work," Joanne said. "Take a cab, stay home from lunch to dinner. It might even work more than once, if it goes smoothly." She laughed. "Deal. Shake him up a bit." There were some shuffling sounds. "Stop it." Joanne was breathing heavily. "I'm leaving. See you tomorrow." The door opened and closed. That evening, after the kids went upstairs, I called Joanne to the kitchen table to talk. She looked tense. "I think you and your associate, Pullen, have gotten too close. I've lost trust in you. Well, I considered just letting things take their course this time and letting you reap what you've sown. But I felt I owed you more than that. And I thought about our children. When Joanne heard that, she was overwhelmed with emotion, sadness and anger. Her face was on the verge of crumpling, but then she pulled herself together and sat up straight. I won't deny that I have feelings for William. I'd really like to act on them. Are you saying you were just going to let it happen? I was prepared for it. We just have to get divorced. That would be the end of us. But I thought we could talk about this before it gets to that point. I love you, and I'm doing everything I can to stop this before you go too far. Well, she scoffed, thanks a lot. Joanne, seriously. This is on you. You either need to control yourself or make a decision to start a new life. I just hope that before you make that choice, you think about what that new life might actually look like. You'd have a fun fling with a boy toy, and then what? You'd really divorce me over a fling? Absolutely no doubt about it. I don't want a divorce. What I really want, well, I think I just need a little room to breathe. What does that mean? You want the freedom to sleep with someone else and still stay married? Keep dreaming. Why shouldn't I get, just once, a chance to experience someone else? You can experience anything you want. I'll be filing the paperwork on Monday. Start making arrangements to move out as soon as possible. Tonight, you get the couch in the living room. Jerry, stop. I was just joking. I wouldn't destroy our marriage over something like that. You weren't joking. We both know that. I won't believe a single promise from you anymore. I don't want the burden of constantly having to watch you. Either way, you could easily slip away during the day with that boy. We're done. Joanne asked, what about the kids? You can spend as much time with them as you do now, maybe even more, considering how rarely they see you. All right. If that's what you really want. But if you just gave me a little bit of leeway this one time, I'd never ask again. Until the next big case, and the next big size. That's it. Go. Joanne stood up and packed a bag. She left and got a motel room for the night. The next morning, she got dressed and went to work. Will walked into her office just after 9 a.m., we can do it this afternoon. I've got nothing urgent, and neither do you. All right. Let's have lunch at your place. Noon. Perfect. Jerry threw me out last night. I stayed at a hotel. I asked him, well, you know, for permission to have a fling, just once. He went ice cold and kicked me out. I told him I was joking. He didn't believe me. Honestly, I don't think I would have believed myself either. What are you going to do? Get a divorce? Will looked concerned. I'm going to try not to. I'm not sure if he really means it. If he divorces you and cites adultery, we could both be in trouble. Maybe we should cool things down. I don't want that. I want my fling. With you. Today. How would he even find out? Desire for Joanne overtook Will, clouding his judgment. All right. They met at the office entrance at noon. Then they took a cab to his place. Will opened the door. Joanne turned and wrapped her arms around him. She'd been aroused all day. She could feel him through her skirt. They shared a passionate kiss. Joanne stepped back and began undressing slowly, her eyes locked on Will's. There was no hesitation in her movements, only intent. Will watched silently, captivated by the moment, as she let go of everything between them. She approached him, unfastened his belt, and helped him out of his clothes. Their bodies moved closer, breath quickening, tension building. She kissed him, and for a moment they simply held each other, as if testing the boundary between desire and consequence. Will lifted her gently, carried her to the bed, and laid her down. She welcomed him without a word. Their connection was heated, driven by months of unspoken tension and dangerous attraction that he paused only briefly, looking into her eyes for something like reassurance, or maybe permission. She gave a slight nod, breath catching in her throat. What followed was inevitable, intense, reckless, and overwhelming. Both of them gave in completely, then they collapsed next to each other. Was it worth the risk, Joanne? Oh, yes. She smiled at him. The rest of the day was spent in or near his bed. They didn't even stop for lunch. At 6, Will said he had to go, and Joanne got dressed. She considered trying to go back home. Jerry couldn't possibly know what she had done. Maybe he had changed his mind. She made sure to clean herself up before leaving, then caught a cab from across the river. No one was home. Joanne assumed the kids were likely at some after-school activity. She sat in the kitchen and ate a sandwich. Then she had a beer. Afterward, she looked around the home she had lived in for so long. If she had to leave, it would make her sad. She decided to boldly talk to Jerry. He couldn't possibly know what she had done, she told herself. She could promise him she would be faithful. She could point out that she had been faithful since her slip-up with Fred, which, truthfully, hadn't been a slip-up at all. That had been a choice. But it was so long ago. Jerry and the kids came home around 7:30 p.m. They'd been at youth basketball. All the kids were excited to tell her about it. Jerry just sat off to the side, quietly watching. After they all ate, Jerry sent the kids upstairs to get ready for bed. "Why are you here, Joanne? I thought I made myself very clear. I've decided to take back what I said about needing space. I realize now it was a huge mistake. I take it all back. I just want to stay here, with you and the kids." "That's too bad. Where were you this afternoon when I tried to call you?" "I had a meeting with a client. You know we have a phone app that lets us track each other's phones. I used it when you weren't at work. You were at Will's apartment for several hours. There's no point in pretending otherwise." "So, what meeting was that, exactly? How could you check up on me like that? How could I not? You spent the entire day having sex with that guy, and now you show up here saying you're taking back your request for room to maneuver. What nonsense. We are done." He said it firmly, but without raising his voice. Jerry stood up and went upstairs to put the kids to bed. He tucked them in, they were all tired after a long day. When he came back down, Joanne was still sitting at the table. "I'm sorry I did it. I won't do it again. I honestly don't even know why I did it." "Just leave, Joanne." "But wait, tell me this. Was the afternoon of sex worth losing your marriage and family over? Because I think you believed it was, and that's exactly why you went through with it." "Yes. It was good. I enjoyed it." Joanne's tone was slightly defiant. Jerry didn't care. "I'll file the papers as soon as I can. Don't come back here. I'll hire movers and send your things wherever you want. Maybe to Will's place, yeah." Joanne left. The divorce was easy for both sides. Joanne insisted on open visitation, but financially, she was fine and didn't ask for anything. Jerry didn't ask for alimony either. The kids adjusted to the new reality fairly quickly. Joanne picked them up every other Sunday for the whole day. In the end, they saw her almost as often as before. Joanne and Will kept seeing each other for about a month. Then she started to feel uneasy. He had begun dating a younger woman. She didn't object, but she didn't like the risk of catching an STD, especially since Will refused to use protection. They ended the relationship. Joanne wasn't particularly upset about it. After the first time, the sex had become routine. She actually enjoyed it much more with Jerry, who had always been more imaginative. Jerry was satisfied with how things had turned out, except for one thing, Will. He couldn't let him walk away without at least a stomachache. Jerry used some of his midday free time to dig into Will's background. He also occasionally kept an eye on him. At first, he saw Will with Joanne, but later with another attractive blonde. He assumed that Joanne and Will were no longer involved. Jerry hired a firm to conduct further investigation and surveillance on Will. He also asked a lawyer to review the paperwork Will had signed with the law firm. Jerry discovered that Will had been an amateur boxer, sang in a church choir, and had relationships with several women, none of whom seemed to know about the others. He also found out that the law firm had billed hours to Will's name far beyond what he had actually worked. A friend of Jerry's had hacked into the firm's internal files. Jerry didn't believe all of this was just some setup to prank Will. He took the bait. One day, while Jerry was out jogging, Will ran up behind him and gave him a quick shove. They were in the park near Jerry's house. At the moment of the shove, no one else was nearby. It was just after 11 on a Saturday. The kids were with Joanne. Jerry realized he could take advantage of Will's arrogance. "Jerry, I know you've been investigating me and having me followed. Stop it. It's over between me and Joanne. I don't need your crap. Screw you, man. I'll do whatever I want," Jerry growled, laughing at Will. "What's so funny? I took your wife. Not that funny, is it? Good riddance. I see you didn't keep her long. She find herself better sex. Ha. You're all talk, old man." Jerry could see Will getting more and more agitated. A few people entered the park, but Will didn't notice. He was tense, like he hadn't come just to talk. Jerry decided to push things further. "Old or not, I could beat you like a drum with just about anything. So back off." Jerry said it, but started backing away from Will. Will stepped toward him, encouraged by what looked like Jerry retreating. Then he shoved Jerry hard. Jerry took the hit and fell backward, on purpose. Will stepped up and, without saying a word, kicked Jerry in the stomach. Jerry rolled with the blow, anticipating it. He barely felt it, though he'd have a bruise the next day. The people who had entered the park earlier ran toward Will, yelling at him to stop. Jerry jumped up while Will was momentarily distracted. He shoved Will. "You coward." Jerry taunted him. "Attacking an older, smaller guy. You should be ashamed of yourself." Will was on edge. He knew Jerry was mocking him. He launched into a full-on attack. The people nearby, 2 men and a woman, were too timid to intervene. Jerry let Will get close, then spun and punched him in the stomach. A loud "goof" followed. But Will took a boxer's stance and landed a clean overhand punch to Jerry. Jerry couldn't help but admire the move. He had hit Will hard and knew it had hurt. Jerry dodged Will's right hand and struck him in the stomach again. Then he landed a left hook to Will's kidney and shoved him toward the swings, landing a few more solid body shots. Jerry backed away, and Will collapsed to his knees, clutching his midsection. Jerry turned and walked off. The whole thing had taken less than 2 minutes. The real damage to Will was done in about 20 seconds. The onlookers came over and helped him to his feet. Jerry crossed the street and began to jog away. As he did, he saw a police car pulling up to the park, lights flashing, but no siren. Jerry never heard from the police or from Will about the fight. He assumed the witnesses had told the cops that Will started it, and then lost. Or maybe Will just chose not to file a complaint. Jerry decided that one fight with Will was enough. He knew he had caught him off guard, and if they ever fought again, Will might win. The 2 men never saw each other again. Meanwhile, Joanne reflected on the entire situation, trying to understand how she had lost control over someone like Will. She had thrown away a good marriage and a stable family life for a fling with him. Looking back, it all seemed monstrously stupid. Joanne realized that it wasn't really Will she had wanted so badly that she gave up her family, it was her work. Her career. That was what she had been most passionate about. That's why she had almost slept with Fred. That's why she had slept with Will. She loved her job so much that she had wanted to sleep with her colleagues, especially the ones she worked closely with. Sex was the ultimate form of closeness. She kicked herself for not recognizing it earlier. She concluded that it was a flaw in her behavior, and that going forward, she'd have to be more careful, although, perhaps it was like closing the barn door after the horses had already run off. What she couldn't quite grasp was that the fling had been her way of distancing herself from her family. It gave her permission to work without the guilt of not fitting into the mom paradigm. Now the family was neatly split in two, her part came every other Sunday. Jerry was moving forward smoothly. He started dating about a year after the breakup and met a kind woman, a single mother of 8-year-old twins. Her name was Naomi. They had a few pleasant dinner dates. Then he invited her and her children over for a Saturday. They all got along very well. Jerry was happy because he really liked Naomi that he invited her to spend a weekend with him at a resort. He made it clear that it was meant to be intimate. They arranged care for the kids, left on Friday, and had a wonderful time. Naomi was a sensual woman, and Jerry, an otherwise ordinary man, had a sexual talent she hadn't experienced before. About 6 months later, he proposed to her. She said yes, and their families were blended. Jerry had to buy a new house, one with more bedrooms, farther from the city. He missed the old house, which was now being rented out. But the new place had a pool and a pool table, and in the basement, a heavy bag, just for Jerry. Jerry was satisfied with how everything had turned out. He didn't regret leaving Joanne, despite their long marriage. She had been a disloyal workaholic. He was confident that Naomi wouldn't betray him. She was an elementary school teacher, not a high-pressure attorney. He didn't feel the need to monitor her, like he had with Joanne. It was much more comfortable and allowed love to grow. And it did grow. Both Jerry and Naomi considered family the center of their lives. Their blended family kept them busy and brought them real fulfillment. Thank you for being with us. And if you're one of those who watches silently, just leave a like, it helps new stories come to light.